Welcome to the Boxing Breakdown with your host, Mark Roxey. What's up, boxing and fighting sports fans out there? I'm delighted to be with you today on our program, the Boxing Breakdown. And today we have a very, very special guest, Dr. Bowen. He's a board-certified neurologist and he has a special interest in the sport of concussion and neuromuscular disease. He has competed. This is the coolest thing. He's actually competed in amateur boxing. He also played baseball at the University of Mississippi. He's a personal friend of mine and also an advisor to fighters. And he's just an all-around amazing man. And I just want to, I'm glad I can share him with you today. And he's going to be joining the program in just a second. So stick around, and here we go. So, Dr. Bo, man, I've been good. I've been doing really well in the face of quarantine and you know, I mean, it's rough. It's rough, you know, and as far as my work is concerned, my businesses and the things that I am involved in, which you know very well, you know, everything's come to a screeching halt as it has for everybody. So it's really just in the face of it all, I'm just trying to stay in action and just, you know, do things that make a difference for my family and for my employees. And yeah, that's really it. We're home, you know, we're safe. I just recently went up to New York City to grab my mother, and I brought my mother back out to the country, and so she's out here chilling and willing, and we celebrated her birthday yesterday, 73rd birthday. So yeah, that's what I'm up to, and so really, you know, I wanted. First of all, let me just tell you how grateful I am that you're here with me on the broadcast. And
my pleasure.
Yeah, I really have wanted, you know, we've been friends for a long time, and I really wanted to just have these conversations with you. And we, you know, ironically, what the listeners don't know is that not only are you a neurologist, but you also have been involved in the sport of boxing for many, many years. And
right.
I just think that that's fascinating. And I'd love for you to just maybe tell the listeners a little bit about your entrance into the sport of boxing and how you, you got involved in the sport.
Sure. You know, growing up, I grew up about a small town just north of Orlando, Florida. And so my dad loved sports, of course, you know, just from a family standpoint, he was always a big boxing fan. So, you know, as a kid, I would, you know, hear tales about Sugar Ray Robinson and Archie Moore and that always kept in the back of my mind. Of course, also when I was starting Little League sports, every town in America practically had a boxing gym as well.
Right.
And it happened to be one of my dad's best friends. It was his Saturday morning golfing partner, was at one point one of the top 5 heavyweight contenders in the late 50s, named Solomon McTeer, who was in the kind of the box off for Floyd Patterson. For Rocky Marciano's vacated heavyweight belt when he retired, which eventually went to Floyd Patterson.
Right.
Solomon lost out to Tommy Hurricane Jackson in some of the one of the earlier rounds. He was the 1956 heavyweight Gold Gloves champ, World Gold Gloves champ, and I think he was the military uniformed services heavyweight champ. And
Yeah.
so we had our gym, and my dad and he were also golfing buddies. My dad played football and
Wow.
was a big golfer too, played golf at Georgia. And so that's where I, kind of came along, was in and out of the little local gym where Solomon was, and wasn't always my primary sport,
Right.
but I always was a part of it, because I played football, basketball, ran track,
Right.
ended up playing baseball at the University of Mississippi also went down and played ball in Central America for a while afterwards, hanging on. And but I boxed all the way through there,
sure.
just back to, for stay strong, sharp, conditioned, and make you tough too,
Right. So you picked it up as a kid. And, once you pick up the sport of boxing, we all know, like, it's hard to shake it. It's an amazing sport. It's an amazing thing to be involved in. It's great conditioning, especially if you're cross training with other sports. So you picked it up at a young age, right? You went off to the University of Mississippi. What position did you play in baseball?
I went up as a outfielder. I pitched and played outfield, went as an outfielder, and had some arm injuries and ended up pitching.
Wow.
And so I was actually a outfielder, but then got converted because everybody got hurt.
Yeah, right.
And so that's how that kind of how it shook out. So I had a couple of hundred at bats as an outfielder early in college, and then ended up pitching my last couple of years.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did you transition from playing baseball in college to becoming a doctor? Like, what was it that caused you to do a pivot like that?
Well, I mean, every little kid's got a dream, right?
That's right.
So mine was always be a big leaguer, but I was also, a realist. The odds of that happening was, still remote.
Right.
So thank goodness, for good parents too,
Yeah, that's
and,
right.
I kept my grades. So it was always a thing. If you make good grades, then your options are open.
Right.
So medicine was always kind of in the back of my mind either way.
Yeah.
It was, I shadowed some doctors when I was in high school through college. And so it was always one of those things. And so I always kept my grades up. I think when I was playing baseball at Ole Miss, I think there were maybe like 3 of us that had good grades. Whole team. Right. So, so that was always that was all the options. So, as I got on in baseball and started seeing all that talent around, I went, my odds aren't looking as good when you see what's all out there, and especially baseball becoming an international sport, man, all over the world. There's very few people that make it. It's a big talent pool, and so I started really tightening down the grades in college, even when I was playing. Right. And then when I finished up, I started applying to medical school. Huh. So that's
So when did you automatically know you wanted to go into neurology? And no. When did that happen?
About probably going into my 3rd year of medical school. I didn't go with any certain specialty in mind. I was pretty open just to go, all right, let's, let me get exposure. There were some people that grew up in medical families, which I didn't, that already kind of had an idea what they wanted to do.
Right.
It wasn't me. We don't have any doctors. When I was coming, there any doctors in the family going back generations. So, so that it was just one of those things where the brain stuff just intrigued me. It's like picking an ice cream flavor. It's just one of those things that was just interesting. And, went from there.
Something that I've thought about you for many, many years is how incredible is it that you are not only a neurologist, but that you also are a boxer that has had many, many competitions? You've competed
Yeah.
in the sport, and I just find that to be so fascinating. How do you quantify that? How does being a neurologist and a boxer intersect?
Yeah. So I mean, you've got choices in life. One, right? And I always say, my granddad would he used to say, you got to live to die.
Right,
So
right,
So what are the things that you enjoy? And uh, and in the big picture too, um, staying healthy and in shape and moving around,
right.
is still probably going to be better for you.
Hmm.
Um, and then knowing your limits are,
Right.
right? That's the big key. I mean, amateur boxing, as you know, is a totally different sport than say pro boxing, which I don't have
Absolutely.
pro bouts.
Which I
So
want to talk to you about. I actually
yeah,
want to talk to you about that
yeah,
later on.
yeah, and so it's a choice like anything. I mean, it can it's you kind of weigh those risk benefits. I mean, if if the benefits are it brings you joy and you do it smartly and you're staying healthy and being a part of a team, helping kids along the way, maybe changing some lives, just
Right.
not your own.
That's right.
Um, those are the things that are on the big list. I mean, the negative list is just getting hit. So
Right.
you got to learn to move your damn head. Just move your head,
Well said. That's exactly
right?
right. That's what we
Don't
work
get
on.
hit.
That's right. And I actually, the listeners don't know this, but you and I know this. We've worked together and I've sparred you. And I could
Right?
tell people, for those of you that don't know Bo, Dr. Bo I used to call him Bo the body snatcher, because Bo would get right on in there trying to trying to hit you to
Yeah.
the body. You can box, man.
Yeah,
You're a
you
good
stay
boxer.
tight. Don't get hit.
That's right.
I'm not gonna stand back 8 feet and watch you hit me with a jab on into my face for too long.
So, what are
Right?
your friends? What are your colleagues? What is your wife? What are your kids? What do people think about you being a neurologist and a boxer, or just being a boxer?
Yeah. Well, my friends don't believe I'm a doctor, so it doesn't bother them that I'm boxing. So that really doesn't.
Right.
Uh, my family just thinks it's funny. They don't know either way. And I don't talk about it too much with my colleagues. There are a few, and in fact, over the years, I've had a lot of them that I've brought to the gym with me,
Yeah.
and yes. So over time, there's been a good many that have come in to work out and experience it,
Yeah.
but it's I don't talk about it a lot,
Yeah.
as far as at work and everything, and because sometimes you don't know how people take that and they don't understand the sport.
That's right. That's
I
exactly
mean, you
right.
got to remember you got the uh, I mean, you had the AMA and the American Academy of Neurology that spent years trying to prove that amateur boxing was this massive danger with studies, right? Cognitive
That's right.
studies in the 90s, trying to shut down Olympic boxing, amateur boxing, and then when the studies came out and showed that in amateur boxing that they couldn't prove that there were any significant cognitive changes, then it kind of died out. But
Mm,
of course, they
right.
never gave a blessing, and so
Yeah.
I
Sure.
just kind of I just do my thing,
Right.
and if people ask me about it, then we talk
Right.
about
You are a trailblazer, that's for sure, and
it.
one that I appreciate tremendously. So I wanted to delve into a couple of topics directly relating to amateur and pro boxing, and
Sure.
really just get your opinion on these things. And it can be off the record. I'm not asking you as a physician. I'm asking you as a person with a tremendous amount of experience in the sport, and just really kind of like what is it that you think a lot about cutting weight. You know a lot about what it takes to prepare for a fight 6 to 8 weeks out, and you
Sure.
know that fighters do all kinds of things to make that weight, to fight at the weights that are more advantageous for them, and also just the long term effects. I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about the long term effects on the brain of dehydration, repeated dehydration on the
Sure.
muscles and on the skeleton. Just kind of give me your view on weight cut.
Yeah. I mean, so in general, and we probably agree on the weight cutting is before you start, when you're beginning to get ready for competition, or starting a camp, so to speak, or um, getting ready for an upcoming amateur event, is that most important thing is to walk around the whole year not far from your goal body weight,
Right.
right? So we know that's the um, because because what we're trying to do is to gain strength and endurance, right?
Right.
We want to be strong as we can, hold the most amount of muscle mass, have the most endurance, just basically peak athletic performance, body
Right.
characteristics. And if you have to lose too much weight too fast, then you're going to sacrifice a lot of strength, muscle mass, and endurance by
Right.
doing that. So if we can keep our guys' body weights, if you're 6 weeks out, you're trying to make 47,
Right.
and you don't. So we know in general, you don't want to lose more than about, based on body weight, it's going to be somewhere between 1.75 to 3 pounds a week.
Wow. Okay.
So you don't that when you do the slow decrease. Otherwise, you're going to start losing a lot of muscle mass and strength
Mm.
if you do more than that. I mean, so if you're 6 weeks out, you're 100 and you're 152, right? So if we just put you on a 2 pound a week weight loss program, you can still lose 10 or 12 pounds safely, right?
Yeah. That's
Right.
right.
So, I mean, but you don't want to walk around at 200 pounds, they're going to fight at 152 and expect to be in peak performance
Right.
by the
Right.
time fight time comes.
So
Um,
what kind of effects do you see when someone tries to cut? So typically like a
yeah,
10 pound, 5 pound, 10 pounds is pretty typical that you want to be
right.
kind of 10 pounds away from your actual weight that you have to
Yeah,
fight at, right? Or that you have to weigh
right.
in at in any case.
Well, you can look at fighters over even a 3 or 4 year window when they got behind the eight ball, and just look at their body when they're making the same 152. If they did it in a slower process, oh man, they look lean, they look strong, they look, they're cut up.
Right.
Uh, versus somebody that went in and just dehydrated over several days,
Right. Took out
and
10
then
pounds
they
of
look,
water weight.
mushy looking. They don't,
Right.
and usually the performance matches the way they look. Um,
Wow.
as far as from the same fighter from a consistency standpoint. Uh, the I mean, even pre-fight dehydration,
Yeah.
if you lose more than within a couple of 2 days before the fight, if you're talking about more than 2% of your body
Body
weight
weight. Right.
dehydrating for that last minute, you're going to lose. You could potentially lose a lot of stamina during fight time, right?
Yeah.
So if you're 100, 200 pounds, I mean that's 4 or 5 pounds to dehydrate. So you want to be, within striking range of your goal body weight, going 2 to 3 days before weigh-in.
Right.
Um, you know, and because if you have to dehydrate too much, of course, the bigger you are, the more you can get away with.
Right. The bigger the
Then you're
muscles are
gonna
too,
you're
right?
gonna suffer performance issues. There's no doubt. I mean, just in clinical studies, if you take somebody and dehydrate them, there's the doodle back there.
I see them. I
Uh,
see the
yeah,
doodle.
he's pretty ferocious. And so if you lose too much um, water weight too fast, that you're going to suffer from a performance standpoint. And And that's what you really try to avoid. Now, the problem is, as you know, this comes up all the time, that you try to get people serious about their diet and doing the right thing and doing that slow cut
That's right.
over 6 weeks instead of doing it in 3 days right before weigh-ins.
Right.
That's always a battle. It's usually somewhere in between.
Yeah. And
You usually have a
there's
slow cut, and you may not quite be at that optimal weight, and then you have to do a fast the last 2 days to make it, and then just pray that there's nothing bad going to come out of it.
And you see so many fighters that do that. I mean, I know I like to categorize the fighters in two ways. One, that they're just living a lifestyle of fitness, and they know that they have to always be ready to go into combat. And then there's the others
right.
that allow themselves to blow up and just really go way too far beyond their fight weights, and then they really torture themselves to get into the right weight class.
And that'll burns them out
Yeah.
too. That more times they have to do that. I mean, if you look at Roberto Duran's career,
Right.
I mean, for years and years he was a well-honed fighting machine. But after he's got the lightweight belt for 10 years, and now he's got an international name, and he's been, he's been following the rules to a T. As he went on in his career.
Right.
Then all of a sudden, here you go. So, and I think that when you have to suffer to catch back up too, it makes it even harder the next time, knowing the pain you have to go through.
You got that right.
I mean, real fighters know this. They know if they've had to catch up or had to be so disciplined.
So where do you see it? Let's talk about the neurology. Let's talk about the effects of dehydration on the neurology, both positive and negative.
Right. Yeah. So dehydration, like if you come into it, we know that if you dehydrate somebody, right, you've got a greater chance of brain injury if you have a head trauma, right? So, meaning this, our brain doesn't sit on bone, and that's why when we shake our head, it doesn't go boom, 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 boom. Right. It sits in spinal fluid. And so it sits in spinal fluid, and that cushions the brain. If we have a rapid dehydration and you go in and you're dehydrated a little bit, there's just risks. And also you have electrolyte shifts and changes that are also other risks from dehydrating so quickly. And but there's certainly neurological risk from dehydrating too fast, and when you go into combat sport.
Yeah. So as a doctor, how do you pinpoint that? How can you tell that someone prior to a fight is actually too dehydrated? What are some of the signs that coaches and teams can look for in their fighters? Prior to a fight, during a training camp, what are we looking for?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is the scale. I mean, if somebody on a Monday was 180 pounds, and then, the day before fight day, they're 162,
yeah,
they're at risk. I mean, the scale's the big thing. I mean, if you're losing more, depending on your weight, somewhere between 4 and 8 pounds of water weight, I mean, you place yourself at some risk. I mean, we don't know how to quantify that risk because there's not been any specific studies.
Yeah.
But we know there's some risk involved. But the scale's the big thing. Now, when you rehydrate, right, then, at least you want to be back to your pre-dehydration weight, right? Before you fight. Meaning, if you went from 180 to 165 pounds, you want to be want to make sure that you're back to 180 before you step in the ring.
Right. So what about in a training camp, because a lot of times fighters will come into the gym. They know they have 6 weeks to cut weight. They might not do it in the first 3 weeks. And then they throw on the big plastic suit, and they begin the process of cutting weight, cutting the water weight continually. And then, you know, I've noticed training fighters that some fighters do very well with it, but other
Yeah.
fighters have neurological. They can be very very angry. They can be
Oh
very
yeah.
easily agitated. Their cognitive skills are decreased. Their ability to their reflexes get softened. So could you just touch on
Mm,
that?
Sure. I mean, imagine, so a lot of times you got a big diet change with that too, right? So most people are going to cut carbs. They're going to go to more a ketogenic diet,
Right.
and now you're dehydrating them on top of it. And I mean, a lot of your brain processes work on glucose,
Right.
and now we've got a ketogenic diet going. It's not to say that ketogenic diet's going to hurt your brain, or it's but most ketogenic diets are not. Um, you don't see them pushed along with super high intensity exercise like boxing and fighting, right?
Right. Right.
Combat sports. It's a different thing. I mean, if we're walking around doing normal activities, ketogenic diet's not going to bother your cognitive function. But now all of a sudden we're burning, 1,000 calories a day with high intensity boxing,
Right.
and you're getting very few carbs, and you're dehydrating yourself on top of it. That'll make you a little off.
Right.
It'll cause cognitive fatigue. Um, behavioral changes. There's no doubt.
Right.
I mean, it's just like if you're starving somebody,
Right.
uh, they can get a little paranoid, delusional, behavior changes,
Mm.
act irrational. I mean,
I've seen
make
it
them
all.
crazy.
I've seen it all. I've seen all of
Yeah,
that you're talking about, and I can't stress enough to the trainers out there and the gym owners and individuals that are working in the fighting sports, MMA and otherwise. You know, those effects don't just affect the fighter, but it affects the team, and ultimately it affects the outcome of the performance of the
sure.
fighter come fight night. So, you know, I'm just intrigued by that. What is the mechanism? What is it? Is it just the starving of the fluid and the food, or what is it that
Yes,
causes?
both. I mean, one is two. I mean, if your glucose levels are dropping during the day, I mean, all you can do it. I mean, you take a diabetic and make them hypoglycemic, right?
Right,
We can see the behavioral changes in the immediately. You can see them start to get a little bit loopy, or they're not moving around as well.
right.
Sometimes they'll get a little bit dizzy. They'll feel faint.
Hmm.
Um, so I
And
mean,
that
that's just the mild stuff, and and also, I mean, it beats you down. I mean,
yeah,
the more that you're fatigued and you're worn out,
right,
I mean, the more stressed out you're going to be, and the more likely you're going to be agitated, right?
right,
I mean, if you haven't slept well for a few nights in a row, we know everybody can be like that, right? And
right,
all of a sudden now you're just, you're on edge. So now you take a fighter who is trying to catch up from behind as far as weight goes, and he's starving himself, probably with a ketogenic diet, a few
right.
carbs. He's putting on the rubber suits probably 3 or 4 weeks too early. And now all of a sudden he's dehydrating himself quickly in the gym.
Right.
His performance suffers because he's doing that. Now all of a sudden he's just even more angry because he's expecting to be better than he is, and he's actually hurting himself.
Wow.
I mean, how the
Yeah,
hell can you get in the gym and get your work? Because mentally they know where they need to be. Most
that's right.
fighters have been around a little while, right? Now all of a sudden they're starving themselves, and they're dehydrating themselves too early. I mean, losing water weight 3 or 4 weeks in advance is going to do nothing,
Right,
right?
exactly.
Nothing. Doesn't mean anything. Now you have to beat all stereotypes. I'm not saying that some people don't have to lose some water weight to make weight at the end. I mean, but doing it 3 or 4 weeks before is just going to cause that's just going to cause your training to suffer, your conditioning. You're going
Right.
to end up losing more muscle mass, strength, and but besides the fact that there could potentially be some physiological reasons why you're not in tune,
Right.
definitely going to be mentally, because you're not doing as well. I stick you in there, let's go run a mile. You normally will clip out a 4.5 minute mile, and now all of a sudden you barely make it in 6 minutes. Well, that weighs heavily on your mind, right?
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So So let's talk a little bit about rehydration and the proper way to do it. What does that
Right.
look like?
Well, and there's different theories, so that probably isn't exactly the right way.
Yeah.
Right. The big thing, some of the stuff that makes sense is if you've got an amateur fight, right? You got to be rehydrated within a couple hours, or 4 hours, 2 hours,
Right.
4 hours.
Yeah, it's usually 2 to 4
Make sure
hours.
that you take your fluids in before you eat, right? Because a lot of people eat, they'll eat a little something too because they've been cutting their food back to make weight. Because if you eat before you start drinking water or whatever you want to use to rehydrate with, right?
Right.
Then all of a sudden you're not absorbing the water as quickly, and you can still go in there a little bit dehydrated. I know from amateur that's a good thing to follow is make sure that once you get off the scale, start rehydrating for at least a half hour before you eat something, because now all of a sudden you're juicy again,
right,
so to speak, right? Because you don't want to get a belly full of stuff that's just kind of limiting absorption of your fluids,
right.
And no, you drink enough beer on a full belly, you don't get the effect you're looking for, right?
Right.
You do it on empty belly, right?
So what about
Same thing.
what about the pros? What about the pros?
And the pros, pros that say. So I think a reasonable what I've seen is one is don't lose your mind and do it too fast. Amateur, you're not going to be able to lose as much weight. You got to be closer to goal weight because you got to compete a couple hours. You don't have 24 hours to recover.
Right.
All right. So with the pros, big thing is we know that for every 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds that you lose from dehydration, that's at least a liter of fluid.
Right.
Right. So when you rehydrate, you probably want to, take the scale. If you go from 180 to 160, let's say you're dehydrated 20 pounds. We know that you're probably going to need a minimum of 10 liters of fluid back in you.
Right.
Right. And normally you want to go a little bit above, that probably 11, 12 liters. You want to go because you don't want to get back to your normal walk and round hydration. You want to be a little extra.
Yeah.
So you got a little reserve when you start the bout itself.
That's right.
But I would do that, a liter every hour or so. It's you don't want to hydrate somebody too quickly. Meaning if you dehydrate yourself, you lose a lot of sodium, potassium, right, calcium, all the electrolytes, and you flood somebody with water. There's some physiological problems that can come out of that by just overloading something like this. So normally you just do it over the the course of 12, 16 hours,
right,
and make sure that you get probably about 1.2 to 1.5 liters for every 2.5 pounds you lose.
Right. So it's a sipping pattern, in other words.
It is,
right?
yeah.
It's a long-term sipping pattern.
And get on the scale, right? Mm-hmm. That's the following the scale to know if your pre-fight weight before you start dehydration was 180. You want to make sure that you're at least minimum 180 when you step into the ring.
Right.
If not, probably 182 or 3.
Right.
Just to make sure that you've got a little bit of reserve.
Right.
You just don't go funnel a bunch of water right after weigh-in.
Yeah. And if you do funnel water like that, it's not necessarily getting into the muscles. It's not really going where it's supposed to go. And then there's cognitive issues related to that on fight night, right?
Oh yeah, all this stuff. And anytime that you have massive fluid loss, fluid gain, electrolyte shifts in and out, it just takes a toll from your muscle cells, your brain cells. People feel sluggish. They don't feel strong. You can see this. It's easy to see this in competitive sports when people have done this and where you have weigh-ins like wrestling, boxing, MMA. The guy that came to the weigh-in that had to go and keep cutting the weight 5 times
Yeah.
before they finally.
There's
I
always
mean,
that guy. There's always that
yeah,
guy at every show.
and
There's always that
they
guy.
they don't look, and you can, and it shows. I
Right.
mean, it
Yeah.
shows, right?
Yeah. And it's
It shows.
unprofessional, right? It's unprofessional in the
Ah,
sport
oh,
in the
yeah.
sport of
People are
professional
paying,
boxing.
the least you can do if you're getting paid to compete, if you're getting paid to compete and you got people showing up from everywhere, spending their money to watch your ass on pay-per-view, right,
That's
is to
right.
make the damn weight
That's right.
in a reasonable fashion to where you can put some effort in. That in itself, let alone the fact that you ought to be ready,
That's
you
right.
be conditioned, and I mean, you're a pro,
Right.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I wanted to also chat with you a little bit about your thoughts on the COVID-19 and just how it's really
Yeah.
stopped the sport of boxing, and I mean pretty much our entire country's kind of come to a grinding halt, but specifically boxing. Do you see a path forward? Do you see a path forward for us?
Yeah, I think the one of the biggest hurdles that we face right now is liability. Even if you do everything right in a and let's say if you follow CDC guidelines, if you use common sense, right?
Yeah.
You have some people become infected out of a certain area, even if it had nothing to do with a boxing event or not. Everybody's worried about that because, I mean, the lawsuits haven't started to fly yet.
Yeah.
But everybody's got that in the back of their mind. I would imagine promoters, are really, really worried about that. And but all you can do is do the best you can.
Right.
Meaning, I mean, if you have now that the testing can be done within a day, you can get results back within a day or two.
Right.
And it's starting to get cheaper. I think you get some tests for $50, $75.
Right.
That it's pretty easy for the fighters and the trainers, right? Ring announcer, ring girl, you can test all those people a day out and make sure everybody's fine to go. Like UFC 249 the other night.
Right.
There wasn't that's what they did. They didn't have anybody in the stands.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have known it except there was no crowd noise.
Yeah.
But the positive was, this is crazy, you could hear every single grunt, shot, pop.
Yeah.
It was eerie. I don't watch much MMA, but I had a friend of mine invited me over, and I was like, holy crap, you can hear you can hear their feet, shifting, just you could hear everything, the ground noise. But that being said, I think that that at least from a competitive standpoint, from a pro standpoint, the big money pay-per-view events can go on.
Listen,
the problem is the ones that count on an audience to pay for the bills.
All right, the smaller shows, yeah. Non-network
No,
events,
I think every state's going to be different, but you can, like at our office already, we have 15 doctors in the practice. We have, like 200 employees. So, and we have gobs of people coming in. And we have a station out front where people are taking temperatures, right? Doing a quick little 3 or 4 question screen.
Right.
You can do the same thing. Have you traveled here and there? Have you been exposed to anybody that's ill? Do you feel ill? Right. And because all you can do is minimize risk. I don't think this is going to go away.
No.
I mean,
You're absolutely correct.
As fighters, hey,
right.
I mean, we got to get back after it, right? I mean, you got to be,
that's it.
You got to have common sense, right?
Yeah.
But, and you don't want to put people at risk, but if you use, whether it's wearing masks, everybody separating a little bit out in the stands, doing some general screening for the patrons coming in.
Right.
And then testing the fighters, the trainers a day or two in advance to be sure. Nothing's guaranteed. I mean, you could get a test and be back come back negative, and 20 minutes later you're exposed.
Right.
But all you can do is what you can do.
Yeah.
Right. Because there are plenty of people that have been sick that they have no idea. They haven't been anywhere.
Right.
Right. Thousands and thousands.
Right. Asymptomatic. So let me ask you another question. This is the $1 million question. Are you ready, Dr. Bow?
Right.
All right. So what do you think about this news? I don't know if you've heard it or not, of Tyson, Evander Holyfield, Briggs, James Toney, Mayweather, all of them at these senior ages looking to come back into the sport out of retirement after many years away, right? What do you think? I mean, Mayweather hasn't been away for many years, but the point is that these fighters, all of them are over 40, and many of the ones that I just mentioned are over 50, right? Yeah. So what do you think of that?
Well, I think before, let's just pretend that their odds of injury aren't higher, which they certainly are.
Oh, yeah.
It just ain't gonna be pretty. I mean, it just kind of demeans because people see these legends come in, and now all of a sudden, I mean, they didn't look good at the very end of their career 15 years ago as they were fading out.
Right. I presume you're
now
speaking
all of a sudden,
about
15 years later, it's just a steady decay. That's just living. That's getting older. That's just part of life. And man, I just think there's a chance that it could put a stain on just the perception of people that are younger, that are just getting exposed to boxing and the competition and seeing this and going, what the hell is this stuff? Right. I don't know. I just worry. I mean, and certainly they have a lot higher risk of injury just given their age. Hell, I can barely get out of bed in the morning without my knees
I'm
giving way for
brother.
the first 10 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
And I'm, I'll be 49 this year, and I'm going, geez. So, I mean, the fact is that if there's big money involved, look, I would fight.
It's millions.
I'd fight Tyson Holyfield and hell, and Ali naked on HBO for $10 million right now.
That's right. No, I think most people would. Most people get in the ring.
I mean, these guys are
Yeah, I don't know
kind of money, and
I don't know about Tyson though, because I just saw the film of him hitting the mitts, and he looked ferocious. But the thing about it, people were like, yeah, well, that's only like 10 seconds of a clip hitting the mitts. Yeah, but you got to remember that Tyson, most of his knockouts occurred like in the first round. So the guy, it's not like he's intending on spending too much time in the ring with anybody, especially if his if the warrior god is back in him. It's gonna be 1, 2, maybe 3 rounds, and it's over. He's still got that power. That's the last thing to go, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like a George Foreman.
Yeah, exactly.
Winning belts when he's 45 years old. It's not, the power's there, and the guys become more savvy and learn how to expend as much energy. Right. They're more patient, and they can still hit. Yeah. I mean, that's not a problem. It's just, but the speed of the game is going to be slower. I don't know if people appreciate it. It's just,
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't want, look, Tyson is a world-class athlete. It wouldn't matter. I mean, if Tyson had played football, I mean, he might have been one of the best tailbacks in the history of the game. That guy's got world-class foot speed, vertical. I mean, straight. I mean, he's a Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Clone.
He is
amazing. in the kind of physical attributes that he has,
and beloved. He is so beloved. I mean, I adore him. I think he's just amazing. I know him from up in Gleason's and stuff. I've had the great fortune to meet him several times, and he's just an outstanding person, and he's become just a really beautiful adult, like really
Oh yeah,
incredible, you know?
matured. You know,
Yeah.
he had a late chance of maturity just with his upbringing. It was terrible. You know, it was horrible.
Yeah.
And he's he's a totally different person. I mean, look, George Foreman was a
Yeah.
villain
Yep.
when he first started pro boxing.
That's right. So
Yeah, you know, and yeah, these guys are some of them mature and finally get see the light and get the right people around them, or just finally wake up and realize, and they're okay. You
right,
know,
right.
that's one of the things you don't want to see either. Is you don't want to see these guys get hurt.
No, that's I mean, that's the thing I think you know, any upstanding coach or
Right,
doctor or you know person in the industry in general would we just don't want to see anybody get hurt. I mean, getting hurt
right.
is not, it's really not the outcome that we're looking for. You
No,
know, promoters
especially
are
when
not looking.
somebody's already done it.
Yeah,
They've already
commissioners.
been there. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, you just don't want to see that, especially from a legend like Tyson or Holyfield or any of them, including Mayweather. You know, he's got such a legacy that he's produced that you really just don't want to see uh, anything bad come of them. So, Dr. Bo Bowden, listen, it has been a pleasure to talk to you. I am just so grateful that you came on with such short notice, and this is a topic that I know a lot of people want to know about. They want to know about. You know, this is kind of like one of those mystical areas of the sport of boxing that a lot of people don't really know too much about. And I just want to thank you for giving us some insight into it, and thanks for being on the program.
My pleasure. Look, we got to do another one, and we can talk about. We'll talk about safety with concussion.
Oh man,
With fight.
I would
You know?
I would be honored to have you on again,
Yeah,
and I
let's
would
do one
love.
down the road, and then we can talk about some of the. That's where I can give you some solid points too on from a trainer standpoint. You know,
Yeah,
look at
definitely.
things, how to protect the fighter, and so they won't be one of the ones that has the troubles going down the line with
That's
cognition.
right. And you know what? All those coaches out there, all the listeners out there, you can look forward to that episode coming up. We're going to do that, Bo, because
Right on.
I think the listeners out there would just really appreciate knowing a lot more about your perspective as a doctor and as a boxer, and just a really awesome guy. Thanks for being on the show. And until next time, this is Mark Roxey, and this is the Boxing Breakdown. Well, that's it. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Boxing Breakdown. This podcast is released each week on Thursday. Check out the live stream of the broadcast on YouTube. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at The Boxing Breakdown. You can also download this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Cast. This broadcast was brought to you by the Roxy Sports Entertainment Management and Advisory Services. Until next time, peace and love.